This is the Conrad Alert. Civil defense information will be broadcast at 6:40.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Y2K, how can we prepare?
Stop a few of their machines and radios. Throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We are fighting for our lives. My family must survive.
Over 5 years, 1,000 gallons of gas, air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada. Streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, and Odyssey. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim. Today is July 27th, 2023, and this is episode 343 of Workshop Radio. How the hell is everyone out there? We're going to start right off tonight with a new segment, and then we'll get into some stuff here in a minute. So, as always, whenever I decide we're going to start a new segment, I put it out to the Telegram group, the Workshop Delinquents, to name it, and they never disappoint. So, Chris Dixon won the round with this one. So, the new segment is going to be, the title's going to be, I Shit You Not, a definitive guide to prepper vocabulary. And it's going to be kind of an opening segment, maybe once a week, once every couple of weeks, where I give you guys the origin behind a term or a word that we use on a regular basis. So I thought this would be fun. And since he came up with I Shit You Not, which I thought was just the greatest name ever, before he even knew that I was going to start off with the origin of Shit Hits the Fan. I thought this would be a fun one to start with because it's such a mental picture that we get when you talk about it, hey? I see Rachel and Byron in there this evening. How are you guys? So I dug into it, and here's what we're going to find out about all of these odd prepper phrases that we have. Nobody really knows where they came from, but they have some educated guesses, some hypotheses. So they said one possible origin for shit hits the fan goes way back in the military, somewhere in World War II or maybe even some earlier conflicts. They said when the latrines or the toilets were not properly covered or maintained, you can see where this is going, strong wind would actually blow feces from the latrine trenches into the air and onto the soldiers, nearby causing a literal messy situation. Thus, when the shit hits the fan, it implies a sudden and unpleasant event. I like that quite a bit. The Oxford Dictionary says the phrase hit the fan dates back to the 1930s, but the use of shit hits the fan likely came into common use in the mid-1950s, somewhere around there. They don't really know. And it gained significant popularity on the internet in the late 90s, early 2000s with the survival and prepping forums that grew up on the internet. And that's where a lot of these terms kind of came from. So I thought that was kind of fun. I think if you guys like this, if you have suggestions for odd phrases or words or even quotes, I've been digging into some really famous quotes. One of them was humanity's only 9 meals from anarchy. I've got a bunch of notes taken on that exact topic, but I thought maybe we'll turn it into a segment. So yeah, I hope that was a fun way to open the show. Let's get the announcements out of the way. First off, it is Thursday night, so that means we have to remember our sponsor. That is Fortress K9, my brother Joel, who was just on the show the other night. And again, it was a huge hit of a show because Joel is the type of guy who absolutely inspires one another. He's the one that'll tell you how it is. He'll tell you how to get there, how fast to get there, but he'll also tell you how hard of a time he had it and how he managed to get out of where he was and build himself up. So give him a check out, fortressk9.com. His link will be in the description tonight. Number 2, Patch of the Month Club. If you're not a member, hey, David Ziegler, great to see you in here. Say hello to your furry better half. I love that little thing. So Patch of the Month Club, go to patchofthemonth.co, $10 a month, $100 a year. And absolutely, I just saw Carl just put a good one in there. So if you liked last month's patch, which was, I have to thank Sean Mills for that, but it was 0 out of 5 stars, government would not recommend. If you liked that one, you're going to love this month's patch. They just went out in the mail yesterday morning. So first person to get it, post it in the Telegram group. I can't wait to see it. Speaking of Telegram group, we've picked up a couple new users, but if you're the type that's just kind of like, I'm quiet, I don't need another social media platform, whatever, come by and join the Telegram group anyway. Give yourself the chance to come by and meet your fellow workshop delinquents. And because there are people across all the different social platforms. I had a really cool workshop member from MeWe earlier today message me and say, hey, just wanted to let you know, thanks for what you do. I spent quite a bit of money on Amazon and I put it through your affiliate. So that was a huge surprise. It was, let's put it this way, it was enough that when I woke up this morning and I seen my report from Amazon, there was a bump in the report. So it made me happy. So thank you guys for all that stuff. And the workshop community where we come together is the Telegram group. So if you're not sure, come by, give it a join, and you'll enjoy it. All right, so I grabbed one news story. Tonight, we're going to talk about the South African power crisis. And I know that seems like maybe a different topic than I would normally talk about, but hang with me, we'll get into it. But before we do, I wanted to talk about a kind of cool story that came out yesterday while I was driving about electric vehicles. And it seems to be one of those few instances in the modern world where companies decide to work together outside of the government. And David Sigler says the workshop Telegram group is so disgustingly nice, makes it always difficult for us heathens to chat. Trust me, there's a lot of us heathens in there. There's just some days where we make it nice. We like to, it's like when new guests come over and you clean up your house and pretend like, you don't dirty dishes and that kind of shit. That's what we do for the new people. After a couple of weeks, Dave, you'll get it figured out. So I found this story kind of a good example of private industry working together in this instance, because almost every time we hear a story about EVs or electric vehicles or really anything right now, the government always seems to have their hand in it. And I was surprised when I woke up and saw consortium of car manufacturers are going to work together to double or create their own charging network across North America, or maybe, North America. I had to make sure it was North America. So if anybody else saw that story, give me a thumbs up in the chat here. But now, I was really excited when I thought it would be the big three. It wasn't completely the big three, but it was some big names in there. So you got BMW, GM, Honda, Hyundai, Kia, and Mercedes-Benz, and Stellantis? I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Anyway, on Wednesday, they revealed a plan to build a universal network of 30,000 fast chargers across North America. No matter what a person thinks about electric vehicles, they're coming. We can't do anything about that. That's the deal. They're going to start next summer installing some of these. And if you didn't catch the day before, a bunch of the new car manufacturers are leasing or going to be using Tesla's fast charging technology as well. So these are going to be like the fast charge a vehicle in 20 to 30 minutes type chargers. But what I really liked is they said they're going to be placed in convenient locations, and they're going to have amenities such as restrooms, food services, and retailers. And you're absolutely. David says they're not being philanthropic. No, they're not. And I wouldn't expect them to be, because this is big business. But what I like is the fact that, hey, I have no problem with anybody making a profit. And they're doing this because Elon was cutting their feet out from under them by basically expanding this network nationwide without anyone else's help. So they're playing catch up. But I love seeing the market do what the market does, as opposed to the government saying, here's $8 billion, go build some chargers. So it's kind of fun to see, I'd love to say we have a free market here in North America. I don't think we necessarily do, but it's nice to see when the free market peeks its head out from its tortoise shell every so often. And it's kind of interesting. And he totally did. He said Elon cut them out of the original charging network, and he did. And that's cool. And I love it. It's right up there with, can't say anarcho-capitalism, but I do enjoy seeing companies work together as opposed to being in bed with the government, as we all know, right? So with that, speaking of companies, let's go to the complete opposite. A slightly nationally run country that is doing everything it can to cause the collapse of a nation. So let's slide into this South African thing. And you might be like, well, Tim, why are we talking about this? Well, this came up 2-3 weeks ago. I had a video on my suggested feed on YouTube. And it was this one guy who used to live in South Africa. I believe he lives in China now, but he talks to his parents on a regular basis. And he was saying something along the lines of, they were without power 8 to 10 hours a day. And I thought, something doesn't seem right about that. It didn't pass the bullshit test to me. I thought, anyway. So I started going down a rabbit hole, and it turns out that their power, which, of course, if you don't have energy, is beyond disrepair. It is absolutely horrible. So I started digging, and it's bad. Wait till we get into this, and you'll hear a little bit about it. But our local medical center at my town, every doctor there is from South Africa, and my doctor is with, he's just incredible. I love him. And he always takes time to chat. And I asked him, I said, I need your opinion on the South African power crisis. I said, is it really as bad as these few people are talking about? Because I hadn't heard about this, and I don't think many people in the preparedness community are talking about it either. And I really wanted it, for whatever reason, it got under my craw, and I said, I got to share this with everybody just so they know about it. And we're going to look at it just from what's happening, hopefully pull a couple of prepper lessons out of it, but I'm going to do a deeper dive into this down the road. If anybody happens to know someone who currently lives in South Africa, I would love to get them on the show. I know it's a touchy subject. We're going to touch on some things that some people don't like to speak out about because they're branded a certain word nowadays that a lot of people don't like, and they're scared of getting canceled. So, but I would love to have somebody come on and chat about it, because it to me right now, it seems like the closest to a modern day collapse that we're seeing. And if I'm wrong, tell me, guys, but I don't hear anybody talking about it at all. So it's a crazy story, let me tell you. It involves government corruption, big friggin' surprise. It involves organized crime, not necessarily mafia, but organized crime. It involves sabotage, and it involves attempted poisonings and assassinations. It's going to take a little bit to dive into, but we'll see if we can get this all organized and go through. But to me, it honestly, I know I'm still kind of processing everything through the lens of Atlas Shrugged, but it really reminds me of kind of halfway through. Yeah, see, Haas says it's the first time he's hearing about it. And when you guys hear more about this, you're going to be blown away by what is going on there. And I don't know, I don't necessarily think there's anything we can do to help them, but holy shit, I couldn't imagine 8 to 10 to up to 15 hours a day without power every single day. So right now, most average South Africans are losing power for around 10 hours a day. They call it load shedding. That is the politically correct term they use for cutting your power off from you whenever we feel like it, because we haven't kept up the grid for 15 years. And so now we can't support the people that are here. Big surprise. So anyway, but it has been a way of life for over 15 years there. They've been dealing with this, but it's gotten really bad in the last couple of years. So it's bad enough that they have an app for all of their people that is the most downloaded app on both Apple, the Apple Download Store, and Google Play, that tells people, hey, guess what? Your community, yeah, you're shit out of luck for the next 10 hours. You know, you got raw meat sitting in a fridge. Yeah, too bad. You're running an ice cream shop. Too bad. Doesn't matter, because if we don't turn it off, the entire grid's going to collapse. Hey, Ted McDonald, good to see you. So, you know, whenever you start researching this kind of stuff, you see these special interest stories. They talk to a local guy who runs an ice cream store, mom and pop really, but they had 10 or 12 employees, and they've been gradually having to lay people off because, well, you can't, it's hard to sell ice cream when, yes, Dixon says South Africa is the home of biltong. It is, because they know how to preserve things when the power goes out or when they don't have power. But so Eskom, ESKOM anyway, they are the national electricity supplier there. And over the years, they've had to put together this schedule that says, surprise, load shedding, you're not going to get your power when you want to get your power. They look after over 95% of all the power in the country. So, you know, is it socialized or nationalized? It's at arm's length. So we're going to talk about that. Haas says, do they have any solar farms in Africa? Short answer is no. Yeah, there you go. So, yep, we're going to talk about that too. David says, keep in mind the state owns the utility in South Africa. They try to make it look like, you know, it's like some of the nationally owned things in Canada, where like Canada Post is technically independent, but it's owned by the government. CBC, same thing. They like to pretend that they're at arm's length, but when it comes down to it, they ain't. So, oh boy, you guys are going to enjoy this. So what's the problem? Why the hell is it so bad? Well, we'll go back to, and this is not a Mandela effect, but let's go back to 1995, I believe, right middle of the 90s, when apartheid was done away with. And the world rejoiced when Nelson Mandela, rightfully so, was let out of jail. And at that point, he took over. And I believe his political party is the ANC, African National Council, and they are a socialist democratic party. Ted says, gotta love capitalism. Well, we do. You know what? It's the absolute best system in the world. I mean, I'm an anarcho-capitalist. So you have this government who took control. Now, here's the thing. In 95, their power stations weren't that old, but they already knew things were a little bit bad. And this government, ANC, they were in power for around 10 years. And in 2007, they were given a report saying, if you guys don't do anything, the country's going to fall apart. So you'd think, all right, let's do something. So they did nothing for basically another decade, because that's what government does, right? And ESCOM, which is basically the state-owned utility, just kind of kept going on as, you know, everything was normal. They knew there was going to be growth in the country. They didn't expand their power systems or utilities at all. And as a matter of fact, they didn't even upgrade or repair any of the aging infrastructure. So you had a country that was growing in population. You had a utility grid that was basically exceeded in 2007. And as of today, I believe they have 18 utility stations in the country, and 16 of them are at least 30 years old, or maybe 35 years old. And most of them are from the 70s. And one of them they just turned back on from mid-19th century. So it was, oh my God, slide that back. Somebody's going to take that out of mid-20th century, 1900s. Yeah, I'm not really sure what a power station from the 1850s would look like, but it wouldn't be really good. So what the hell's going on? Because it's not just one thing. You don't just wake up one day and all of a sudden an entire country. And, you know, South Africa has its, its poor areas, but it has Johannesburg as well. And it is, it's an okay country. Like, it's not, top tier, but it's not completely third world poor either. So how the hell did all of this happen? So there's a lot of fun things that take place in this kind of journey over the last 15 years that did it. But so first off, the ESCOM, this is the government-run utility company, they're hugely behind in their bills. They are almost on the verge of bankruptcy. And hey, night, Rachel Brown, great to see you. So this is kind of how it works. They provide the power. Then all of the local municipalities, however many districts there are in charge of billing the local people and collecting the money. However, for many, many years, a large portion of the municipalities in South Africa have been like, yeah, we're just not paying you. You're not providing the service we want, and you haven't upgraded any infrastructure. So, in North America, when we buy a new home or build a new home and you call up the utility company and you're like, hey, here's the deal. I need to get my electricity hooked up. And then 6 to 8 weeks later, it is hooked up, right? Well, basically, they haven't done any new hookups there in over a decade, or at least any new hookups outside of the major metropolitan areas. So you've basically had an entire decade of the company not hooking any more up. So what do people do? Well, they do like when I was in New York City that time, and I was working with a missions group in an old hospital, and the squatters had gotten in there and they ran power along the T-rail of the drop ceiling, that kind of stuff. So you have all these illegal hookups, all kinds of people who are getting power that aren't paying for it. Then you have some people paying the municipalities, lots of people not. And then the municipality saying, nah, you don't need the money, you're good. That's just one. ESCOM, because we love a good story about government corruption, Just one story recently, 3 employees, including one very high up, were caught stealing millions, not hundreds of thousands, not thousands, millions of dollars worth of fuel oil every single month. How the hell do you steal that much fuel? What do you do with it? It had to have been a black market thing. So that's just 2 things. Here's another one. Organized crime has gotten involved. And of course, whenever there's unions involved, the mafia seems to follow suit. Oh boy, this is a whole other story. So they basically have to keep their coal deliveries under armed guard at this point. Because what'll happen is they'll go and dump their coal off at a place where it's supposed to be, so they basically have a holding area. So a bunch of trucks bring it in, and then the company comes, picks it up. And Chris Dixon says unions are the original organized crime. You're not wrong there, brother. So basically what they'll do is they'll bring their coal in, they'll dump it down in a central holding area, and then the utility company will come and pick up the coal. Well, what was happening was they'll dump the pure coal. I mean, this is mafia through and through. They'll dump the really nice coal in a location to be picked up by the utility company. Before they get there, the mafia or organized crime will come, steal all of that good coal, and put junky coal in there. So Haas says maybe Sally Struthers can get people to donate money for solar panels. That's the comment of the night, guys, right there. So you've got coal, which is relatively cheap anyway, and some of the dirtiest stuff. And there it is. They're stealing the good quality stuff that they're trying to use in their power generating facilities, their coal burning facilities. They're stealing it right out from under them, and then they're bringing them back an inferior product. But it gets better because they're like, well, this is what we need to do. We need to start testing for purity of the coal. That's it. Yeah. They need to start testing for the purity of the coal. So they did. But here's the thing. Government's in on it too. So you have all these high up government people who are like, let's test it. They'll send a sample from the good stuff. They'll take the sample before all the good stuff gets stolen. Then they send that sample in, or they'll just swap samples out completely. Like I said, if you've never read Atlas Shrugged, or if you have, if this shit doesn't ring a bell, what does a man much smarter than I, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And I mean, fiction isn't history, but it's a good reflection of corruption. And this is exactly what it is. And then, of course, you have your politicians, and everybody's like, we need to do something. We have to fix it. So what do politicians do? They get in there and they're like, all right, we're going to pass a law that will force whatever it happens to be. So one of the things that was a really bad issue over there was government officials also owning stakes in this power company, which is supposed to be at arm's length, right? Well, that's fine. We'll pass the laws. We'll just create shell companies and we'll keep doing it. Or we'll just pay off people who are supposed to be enforcing the rules, and on and on and on it goes. So you've got government corruption up here that just doesn't give a shit. They're 100% looking out for themselves, trying to steal as much money as they can. You have an incredibly aged infrastructure of power utility systems that have completely fallen down around themselves. They can't repair them. They can't build new ones fast enough. You have your biggest customers aren't paying, and you have internal sabotage as well. Let me scroll down in my notes here just a little bit. I thought I had my trackpad working really good, but here we go. All right, so here's a fun one. So on top of that, late one Thursday afternoon, a maintenance contractor reached his hand under a huge rotating shaft at an aging power station in South Africa. When I read this story, I thought, oh, this is going to be like an intentional workers' comp claim. No, it's not. It took him just a few seconds to unscrew a steel plug, smaller than a coffee mug. As he moved away from the scene, lubrication oil started seeping all over the innards of the shaft. The steel bearings inside overheated, and before long, the coal mill, and with one of its station's 8 turbines, ground to a sudden and explosive halt. Congress clowns, very close, Rachel. So on top of all this other stuff, you have workers who are intentionally sabotaging. So citizens of their own country who are seeing their own people sitting in dark, old people dying because they don't have, oxygen machines, all of that kind of stuff. And they're sabotaging their own people. What the hell is going on? Again, Atlas Shrugged, right? It's almost like there's a disconnect between, yeah, we need to do better, but nah, I'm good. So the dude's name was Simon Shongwei. He was 43. He was working as a subcontractor at the plant that was built in the 60s. So this plant was from the 1960s. It was bombed by anti-apartheid activists in the 80s. They mothballed it in the 90s and just recently brought it out of retirement because if they didn't, again, they'd run out of power. They don't really know why he did it. They said it could have been designed to break the coal mill in order to enable a corrupt repair company to come in and fix it at an inflated cost. There's another one. This just blows my friggin' mind, guys. You have this dude might be working for a corrupt repair company who's like, hey, we haven't made money in 3 days repairing ancient utility companies. So could you go in there and unscrew this and blow everything up so we can come in and fix it really fast, like they fixed the I-95 in Philadelphia? I think they did a damn good job with that. But so they're basically trying to destroy things so that they can come in and fix it at a high price, maybe. They said, or it might have been part of a broader political conspiracy to damage South Africa's infrastructure and undermine the government, as it's being increasingly seen as falling apart. No shit. You literally haven't fixed the lifeblood of your country in the 3 decades you've been in power. That probably should give you another term. That's what I'm thinking, right? So they said this goes on all the time. This is just one example of a ton of small little pieces of sabotage here, there, and everywhere. And they just don't know. They said another solution or a suggestion might have been that it was done in a way that would threaten the management into accepting the corrupt union's recommendations. Again, so organized crime, unions, shady business dealings, they don't really know. They said instead, it was one relatively small act in an ongoing and highly successful criminal enterprise that involves murders, poisonings, fires, cable theft, cartels, and politicians. Funny how that word politician always finds its way into these kind of stories, isn't it? He said, yeah, he said 30-day review says this stuff happens everywhere. 100% it does. The crazy thing is that it's usually done at a scale that it keeps it below the public radar. But I mean, when you have an entire country that is floundering, and so there's possibilities this winter that people are going to be without power for 16 out of every 32 hours. So they're going to do it on a 32-hour cycle. You're going to lose half power for 2/3 of a day, have it on for 2/3 of a day, off for 2/3 of a day. I can't even imagine. And to me, I'm thinking, well, okay, what would be the solution? Get yourself I don't like the term solar generator, but get yourself a power station and team it up with some batteries and some solar panels, maybe. I don't know. I mean, you would think Africa is very hot. Solar would be the way to go. And there is some solar coming online over there, but for the most part, it's been a business as usual. Let's keep these old coal-fired power plants running so that we can keep making the money that we want to make. I said it's an enterprise that is on the risk of derailing international attempts to nudge South Africa away from coal and towards renewable energy sources. Every story you read, they're like, renewable will be the answer. Well, it might be, it could be, but it really doesn't solve the fact that you have this entire huge amount of corruption. It doesn't fix that corruption problem. And until we do away with government entirely, it probably never will. And latelyl says, pure insanity. I plan my days around the power, but then you don't want to overstress the system for the time you do have it up. Right. There's the other thing. So people are like, okay, well, when can I go to work? Or when can I go to the grocery store? Because if I go at the wrong time and I get caught out, think about this. Johannesburg is not a small city. I should have looked up the population. But say you need to go to the grocery store and you're halfway to the grocery store when the power goes out. Guess what doesn't work? Street lights or signal lights. So all of a sudden, everybody just crashes in the intersections. Another thing, Security systems. Almost every home of any value in South Africa has walls, razor wire, or some sort of protection at the top, cameras, security systems. And as soon as the power goes out, guess what happens? Just like when we learned about in the LA riots. When systems collapse, the people that were going to do bad things do way more bad things as they go along. And that's what's happening over there. It's insane. Absolutely insane. Listen to this story, guys. One of the CEOs of Eskom, this is how friggin' insane it was. He was told, sorry, I can't get you coffee right now. Our coffee dispenser in the office is broken or faulty. They couldn't really figure it out. His assistant comes over in about a half an hour and fills up his personalized mug. So, you know, I'm sure he has some mug that says world's greatest boss or power trip or something. I don't know. Anyway. And she set the cup down. He didn't get his coffee for a couple of minutes, brought it back over to him, took a drink, and all of a sudden he fell on the floor after a few minutes. He said, I didn't detect anything. The foam consistency was a bit different than normal, but I thought nothing of it. So they ended up taking him to the hospital. So on top of all this other things, you have assassination attempts. 15 minutes later, the man in charge of South Africa's power utility felt off balance. He was shaking violently and could barely breathe, super nauseous. His security guards ran him to a local nearby clinic. The doctors later confirmed that he had been poisoned with cyanide, possibly mixed with rat poison in order to mask. It's like, yeah, cyanide might not do it, so let's add rat poison to it as well. Holy shit. How crazy is that? So on top of all this, you have who knows what, competitors in the government, organized crime, a union that doesn't like you, who knows, insert whatever. But they're like, oh yeah, let's kill the CEO while we're at it. So now they have to make their own coffee. It's unreal. So like I said, they've got 19 power stations there right now, and only 2 were built in the 21st century. That's what's crazy. It's been something that since at least, Warfarin, Ted says, yes, exactly. Since 2007, the first report was put out that caused everybody to say, oh, maybe we should do something about it, but we didn't. 2014, so it only took them 7 years to decide that they were going to build an app, and I told you about that. So they build an app as far as that'll at least tell you, it'll be like, hey guys, guess what? 10 hours today without power. Have a great day. Unreal. Here's another part, and this is where it really slides into this friggin' collapse territory that I was kind of chatting about a little bit. Said in a public statement, the South African Funeral Practitioners Association warned that bodies in morgues were decomposing too rapidly because of the unreliable electricity, putting huge pressures on funeral parlors to process corpse. And as a matter of fact, they issued a statement sometime in the spring this year that people should be buried within 4 days in the country because they couldn't guarantee they could keep their bodies fresh for any longer. How crazy is that? Could you imagine if we were living in this, guys? And like I said, this is not like bottom of the barrel third world countries. I mean, it is in Africa, I know, but it's South Africa, and this is unreal. And this is basically all boils back to government corruption. So this is a story, again, another one of those personal interest stories that I happened to find. It said, before this lady died in October 2022, Lisa needed oxygen for 17 hours a day. So think about this. This was when I did the story on the 1970s, 1980s blackout in New York City. And there was somebody that was on a ventilator at home waiting to pass away. And they basically had to carry him all the way down the stairs and try to get him to a hospital. So this lady needed oxygen 17 hours a day. Her stationary oxygen machine required mains power, they call it over there. And they said with periods of load shedding, it was super stressful. And I can imagine it was, particularly when the power didn't come back on as scheduled. Because something else I read is they will say, hey, your power is going to be off for 10 hours today. But really what that means is it's a scheduled shut off for 10 hours. And then the next hour or two, they gradually ramp the power back up. So you could be 10, 11, or 12 hours sometimes, depending. Chris Dixon says, sounds like no one wants to solve any problems. Just blame the next guy. Yep, that's exactly 100% what it is. And again, when you look at what Ayn Rand talked about in Atlas Shrugged, that was her big thing, was when you get to a point in society where no one will ever take responsibility for anything, this is the kind of shit you end up with. This is like every single time that my better half makes a phone call to anyone within government looking for an answer about starting a business, about daycare regulations. Everybody will always give you a suggestion, but they will never give you a straight, solid answer of this is what you do, this is how you do it, this is how you fucking fix it. Nobody will ever do it. And so here we are. And this is where we end up when you end up with people like that. So this one here, Gus Olivier, a farmer from Hertzogville in Free State Province in East Central South Africa, says he and other farmers in the area have been forced to throw away hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of seed potatoes because of disruptions in the cold chain. So basically, they have to guarantee, if they want to know that their potatoes are going to grow, they have to be refrigerated at a flat rate. And this power spikes are going up and down and up and down. And so now you've got tons of people that are getting laid off because businesses can't afford to pay them. You have businesses themselves and food suppliers who can't afford to grow the food or who can't keep their food supply systems in place. And then how about this one? A gruesome video circulating on social media recently shows workers removing 50,000 dead chickens from a farm in Northwest Province. The birds suffocated when power outages caused the ventilation systems to stop. That's scary. And this is not a doom and gloom thing. This is just one of those, I wanted to share this story because I have not heard one other person anywhere in the preparedness sphere that have been talking about this. And I'm going to take some more time and do another episode on this in a couple of weeks, talking about maybe some of the off-grid kind of solutions that would help. Now, they are, if we go back up earlier, David was saying that I think it was 30% of the population is unemployed there. So there is a huge poverty gap. And so it is difficult for them to be able to afford any sort of off-grid solutions. And Eber Millie, good to have you. I see this is a new name in here. Appreciate to see you. He says South African Boorbells. I probably butchered that name. I really apologize. But he said they are great dogs for security, built for the collapse. It's great to see you. I always love seeing new names in here. If you're not part of the Telegram group, come over and join us, delinquents over there, because that's where all the cool kids hang out and we cause shit all the time. So, but yeah, it's really unbelievable. The chicken thing. And Letty said she was going to mention just that morgues and how the refrigeration or lack thereof would be a problem. I mean, just think about all the different problems you could have. Simple things like all the food in your fridge just goes rotten, or you start taking chances because, well, you know, that freezer was only off for 6 hours and the meat didn't thaw out too much. So that happens day in and day out and day in and day out. And all of a sudden, boom, you've got a serious health issue from eating spoiled food. There's another one. Like I mentioned, stoplights going out, car crashes, crime. It's just something that is spiraling out of control that can cause all kinds of problems. And then, then you have a business that can only open for 4 hours a day or 8 hours a day as opposed to 8 or 12 hours a day. So then they can't make their money to pay their bills. So then they lay more people off. And once you hit a critical mass, it just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling. And I'm kind of scared for people over there, guys. Gingerbread Farm says, what about electric cars? Well, for the people that have cars, it might be a good thing, for sure. And Haas says, is Zello still a thing? It is. Maybe we should start a Zello channel, but it's hard for me to have something on all the time that, like, I love Zello, love it all the time, but I just, I don't always, I haven't been on there in a long time. Let's put it that way. Oh, good to see you, Backwoods Butcher. All right. So what the hell do they do? I don't even know if I have an answer, but so I was telling you a little bit about the security systems. Beyond that, I did do some more reading about some of the solar systems, some of the options that people have. But so they interviewed this lady named Karen McDonald. She runs a local swimming school. And she thought, you know what? Maybe I'll install solar panels so that I can keep my business going. And for her, it was $29,500, so about $30,000 to install solar, which, you know, I don't know, is it worth it? Is it not? But this is what she said. She goes, that is a major life decision for me to make at that point. That's a lot of money, you know, especially if you're only working part-time or if your business has been shutting down for half to a third of a day for the last 3 or 4 years. Where are you going to come up with that money? Now, they are trying to move towards solar here. They said there's a long wait. There's a guy here, he says, I know a solar provider that has 40 requests a week, all for massive, big solar projects. This was coming from a guy who's a cattle farmer looking to do that. And so, like I said, I talked to one of my local doctors, and he has quite a nice compound out in the bush. And I asked him, I said, do you have ESCOM power? And he says, no, because the first reason is that the lines run there, but the hookup fee was something like $30,000 to get hooked up. So I think that's one of those things where if you pay enough, they will come out and hook you up. So he's been off grid for years. And he said some of the houses in the city are getting generators, but again, it's a very tedious and expensive thing to do for people. And Gingerbread says, my solar was very expensive. It works for my particular life, usually because I don't drive much, but I do need to borrow a gas car to get to SRF, no infrastructure. Yes, it's coming around, right? But Haas says, sounds like somebody could make a quick buck in Africa selling the panels. And this is what I'm saying. This is one of those situations where the free market could absolutely be a solution to this problem. Because if you had people in there that could get solar power to the people for a reasonable price and still make a profit at it, I can guarantee you they could do it a lot faster, a lot more efficient, and a lot less expensive than all of the bureaucracy of the government red tape. And of course, they're in a state of emergency. And so that I was reading about this as well. They declared a state of emergency over their power grid. And so basically what that allows them to do is to spend more money and to skip red tape through the government. Now, the problem is that most people are thinking back to 2020, and during COVID in South Africa, apparently, this is going to be a big surprise to everyone, there was a huge waste and mismanagement of funds on PPE. People paying, it was 5 to 10 times the amount that they were quoted, they would pay after the fact, because again, it was kickbacks to, you know, buddy A, B, and C. Everybody would pay it. It's a story of as old as time. You know, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, and we forget about everybody else, right? So Gingerbread says, could you get it to the people without losing it to the pirates, government, or free market? Well, maybe. I mean, at least a person could try, right? So here, I thought this was something. This was from another article I found. They said, as they come to terms with the new reality, many South Africans are finding it hard to stay optimistic. This one government official said, the light at the end of the tunnel is actually a train heading in our direction. Can you imagine? So last year, this is just to kind of sum up the crisis that they're dealing with right now. But last year in 2022, there were 288 days of power cuts. Some of the power cuts were up to 15 hours a day. But you're looking at, do the math there, what is that? At least 80% of the year, you lost power for some. So what would you guys do? Anyway, it wouldn't take very long to start looking at some sort of solutions. And I don't know what it is. And you know, I haven't even talked about here. So here's the other issue that they're dealing with is, and I did speak about this a little bit, was the illegal power hookups they have over there, entire encampments. So they said, if you guys saw the thumbnail, it's like a bunch of people standing there looking at this big nest of wires. And so people who live in these encampments just go in and hook up the power however they want, and nobody ever pays for it. They said in Johannesburg alone, there's over 250 separate encampments with illegal hookups stealing power. So everybody steals it. The people who do pay for it don't actually pay for it. The people who are supposed to collect those bills don't collect the money. And then they're supposed to, in turn, send it up to the utility company, and they're not doing it. And on top of all of that, there was something else I was reading, just something stupid and simple, but the big company, ESCOM, they bill at the end of the month, and they put interest on that bill at the 15th of the month. All of the municipalities don't pay the bill for 30 days. So what ends up happening is they pay the bill, but every single month they get extra interest that's been compounding. And they've just got to the point of whatever, we're just not paying. We don't care anymore. It blew me away. I couldn't believe it. So there's no simple answer to any of this, not at all. And it's not like something that's going to get fixed tomorrow. They do have a couple of more power generating units that are about to come online over the next 4 to 5 years, but that is barely a drop in the bucket. I think probably some decentralization would help. Now here, like this, I'm going to sit here and give you guys answers to the South African energy crisis. Well, I'm no expert on it, so I'm just going to shitball some stuff, but I think decentralizing would be a huge thing, but none of this is going to happen overnight. It's going to take decades, generations probably, to fix it at this point. But I think individuals, where they can, need to get off grid or use solar. I don't even know. I don't know where you start, but I think the main thing would be for each individual household to try to figure out a way to have at least a couple of batteries or battery packs. But to me, it almost seems like, you joked about Sally Struthers earlier, but it almost seems like one of those things where we really could do a drive to send, power stations over to people over there, because right now, I mean, they just went through the worst water crisis of their country they've ever had. And that was only a couple of years ago. And I was asking one of the doctors I was talking to about it, and he said, yeah, water's still a bad situation over there. We're having a hard time with it. But he said power's the worst right now. So it's interesting. I don't know. I don't know what the solutions are, but I did do some Googling, and when you search, there's thousands of websites that say solutions to the, let me scroll it down here just a little bit. They said, where did I have it? So there's a whole bunch of places selling solutions to the South African power crisis, and things like mini solar panels and all of this. So there's people trying to both help and, unfortunately, probably profit in a bad way off of this kind of thing. And Backwoods, he said, do they have any nuclear weapons? They have nuclear power plants. Well, they definitely don't have nuclear weapons. I know they're not part of the nuclear club, but I'm a huge fan of nuclear power, and it's honestly probably the way of the future. It's, at this point, one of the cleanest powers, and some people say how. Let's not even get into that tonight, but it absolutely would be a huge boon for them. But again, what does it take? Like, if I remember right now, is it like 20 to 30 years for a nuclear power plant to get up and pass through all its regulatory hurdles, or something insane like that? So Chris Dixon says, we're talking about sending things over, but how much of it would actually make it to where it needs and not get stolen or sold to the highest bidder? And there's the problem. And I think that's why everybody is so discouraged about helping that country, or helping, even trying to help within their country, is because every single time that somebody tries to make things better, someone sabotages, whether it's, hey, let's bring on the old power station from the 1960s. Well, that's okay. This dude here, he'll just go in and loosen the bolt and spill the oil and screw the bearings, right? Or, let's start implementing testing to make sure that they're getting the right type of coal so that they're getting the most power they can out of the power. Nah, don't worry about it. We'll just swap out the samples. You go ahead and steal the good stuff. We'll send the shitty stuff in, but as long as the test comes back good, you're good. It's one of the craziest things that are, yeah. And I should say this, Justin, I hope you understand what I'm saying here. I'm not advocating any government help whatsoever. This is all private donations on my part. I would never recommend government help to anywhere. Definitely would be happy for it to stay with us. And Dixon says they have to stop self-sabotaging and be ready for help. They do. And maybe they need another change of government. I don't know enough about the political system, but here's my thing. What do they say? The definition of insanity is to continue to do the same thing but hope for different results. Well, when you've had a party in power for 95, what does that go back to? 20. Holy crap. Yeah, 28 years at this point. So basically 3 decades of power, and things have only gotten worse. I think it's time that you change. That's what is that, a dictatorship or a monarchy or anything like that? So did they? I don't know. Chris Dixon just said, didn't they just have a mini coup there this week? Maybe they did. Maybe I've been on the road. I had my head to the grindstone putting this show together last night at the hotel I was at, and then got up here in time to set up for the live tonight. Maybe they did. Maybe it's finally boiling over and they're going to try to fix it from the inside, because I don't know. There's nothing else that can fix it. I really don't know. And Backwoods says, where is it here? Oh, sorry. He said they completed their first nuke in 1979 and signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation. I had no idea that South Africa was part of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. I really didn't. I did not think they had joined that. That's cool. Thanks, man. So then they have the nuclear power. Why not put together some nuclear reactors? Well, then again, do you really want them doing that when you have people doing exactly what they're doing? Because what are they going to do with what little bit of spent waste comes out of there? Or, they're like, well, here, guys, this is, we need to put out to the best bidder for the lowest bidder, the cooling ponds and the containment systems afterwards. So where's that going to go? Because somebody's brother, sister who owns a business and is chummy with the government is going to be like, here's the deal. You kick me back 90% of it. I know that's supposed to be made out of lead, but we're just going to make it out of mud and straw instead. So there's that, right? Yeah, Chris Dixon says Chernobyl to the power of 8. That's what it is. So if you guys have solutions, throw them at me. We'll talk about this again, but I would like to, I've reached out to a couple people I've seen on Reddit who have been talking about living there and dealing with it. Like I said, I don't want this to be exploitative. I don't want it to be like, hey, I just want a good story on here. No, I'd love to talk to somebody to see what life really is like there. But as I was warned, most people don't want to talk about it, because here's the deal. If you speak ill of the government, you can be termed being racist or against the government. And that's not the case. Like they said, in some of the articles I read from CNN, it's not a racist issue. It's a shitty government issue. Of course, they didn't use the word shitty. They just used incompetence or something like that. So, yeah, it's unreal. And Gingerbread says large amounts of large amounts of power are lost in transmission. The best is to produce as local as possible. 100% it is. And especially when you have old aging infrastructure like that, I bet they lose even more than what we would average lose in North America. So that's what I have on the South African power crisis for this evening. So let's end on a more mundane note, but I was putting the show together last night, and I asked the people, my fellow delinquents in the Telegram group, I said, what would you guys like me to talk about that isn't such a heavy issue as this South African power crisis and collapse? And I believe it was Chicken Duck, I hope that's who it was, said they wanted me to talk about the art of appliance repair. And it was quite funny that was mentioned. And I know this is like, we went from talking about the origins of Shit Hits a Fan into electric vehicles, then a deep dive into a really dark topic of South African corruption. And we're going to finish up with, hey, how can I fix that old dryer that's sitting behind my garage and I don't know what I'm doing with it? So it was kind of funny that they asked this, because it just happens to be a topic that I've been diving into quite deeply again just recently. So for some reason this summer, we have had 4 dryers die the 12 units don't have dryers. So take those 12 off. So the 14 remaining units, we've had 4 dryers die this summer. And every time one dies, I keep an extra in the appliance shed. So we have an appliance shed that has a dryer and a stove in it right now. And we had a fridge as well. And so when it dies, I'll swap it out with the refurbished dryer that's in the appliance shed. And then I will fix the dryer. And so I've done this 4 times this summer. One broke, and then I'll replace it with the one that I fix. So what I wanted to say was, if you are going to get into appliance repair, it can be really cheap. You can do it for dirt cheap, because almost everybody, as soon as an appliance goes, if you spent $500 on a dryer, That's roughly what they're going for right now, cheap ones anyway. And you need to call somebody in to fix it, you might as well just buy a new dryer. And everybody knows it, because how are you going to get somebody to your house, pay for their time to get there, and buy the parts to fix it, come back out and repair it or whatever? How are you going to get somebody to do that for under $200? I don't see how it's possible. And if I'm going to spend $200 on a used appliance, I'm going to buy a new appliance. That's just me. It's kind of that halfway mark or a little less, and especially depending on how old it is. So anyway, if you want to start tinkering, dryers are the easiest one to get started with. Now, again, remember, they're 220, 240 volt. So you don't fuck around with that if you can help it. But really, the only thing you need is a multimeter. That's the first thing, or multimeter, however you want to pronounce it, but for checking continuity. But dryers are dead simple. Don't use that word, Tim. Here's the thing. There's three things that almost always go on a dryer. The first one is a thermal fuse, and it looks like about a 2-inch wide and about quarter inch wide and about 2 inches long, and it has two teeth on it. And it's back in the vent area, so where the hot air goes through. So if that ever gets blocked and the heat starts building up in there, that fuse will be the first thing to burn. And it's dead simple. You can get them in Canada right now on Amazon for about $5 a piece, and I'll bet you in the States you can get them for about 35 cents. So I buy 3 or 4 of them to have on hand, because they're the first thing that almost always goes. And all you have to do is pull your 2 wires off the back of it and test for continuity. If it beeps at you, it's good. And if it doesn't, that's your problem. Number 2, the door switch. That's the thing that gets used, I would say, probably the most on a dryer. You know, it's that little thing that clicks every time you open and close it, because you probably open and close it more often than you turn it on and off. So if that goes, you got to pop the top up, and that door switch, there'll be 2 little connectors on there. You put your test for continuity, close the switch. If it doesn't beep, it's bad. And then the third one is the on-off switch or button, whatever you want to call it. Again, that goes a ton. Heating coils absolutely can snap. Yes, I'm just talking about the 3 simplest things. And then the 4th thing is the belt. If you've never, and for some reason I haven't had one of them, knock on wood, break on me yet this summer. Chris Dixon says, and people slam the dryer door all the time. Yep, kids are really good at that. But a dryer belt is narrow. It's like 1/4 inch wide, and it runs around the entire drum. So that can be something you need to replace too. But it honestly, for me, it's usually the fuse in the back first, the door switch second, and the on-off switch third. And I've had 2 fuses in 1 each of the switches so far this summer. So that's the easiest way to check for that. Yes, so Gingerbread says, remember 220 has 2 fuses that don't always blow together. Well, unless you have breakers on the at home, and then that can be too. Because yeah, you can have where your dryer will run, but you're not getting any heat. So there's tons of complicated things, but what I like is to try the simplest things first. So then the next easiest appliance to repair is electric stoves, also 220 or 240, depending on what you call it. So be careful with that as well. And again, multimeter is really good. And really, it's just breaking it down, thinking about the system, and then troubleshooting one thing at a time. So if your oven isn't heating up, hopefully it's just an element, because that's super simple to work. But one of the easiest ways to figure out if it is an element is turn it on bake. And if your bake element, if it's not warming up, but you turn it on broil, and your broil is, there's a really good chance that your bake element is burnt out. And it's almost always the bake element, because that's the one that everybody uses all the time. Almost nobody ever broils anymore. So if that's burnt out, that's easy to replace. Usually it's 2 screws and 2 wire clips. You pull it off, take that down to your local hardware store and say, I need this. And they'll match it up, because most of them most of the bigger ones keep universal ones on hand. That's the easiest way to get that. Now, if it's up on top, if you have one stovetop burner that's not working, again, they're fairly universal, especially on the old. So Gingerbread wants to know, can you swap them? I think this is done on purpose, but almost no. Typically, they're a different size, and I think the reason for that is that the broil gets hotter, so they have an extra kink in them so that they can run a little bit extra power and a little bit extra heat through. But Typically, any stove I've looked at, the broil and the bake elements are different sizes. So if you try to swap them out, even if they fit, your wife ain't going to bake any good bread, or you're not going to bake any good cookies or nothing. You're not going to have a good day. So, and to be safe, you're better off to match that up for sure. Stovetop burner, same thing. If you turn your switch and it doesn't work. Oh, also, I should go back on those, on your bake elements. If you pull that out, you're going to find a break in it typically, because in order for there not to be continuity in it, it's actually going to have burnt through somewhere. So if you can find a burn spot, you're good. But you can also take the back off your dryer or your stove, make sure it's not plugged in, and test the element for continuity as well. If it beeps, it's good. If it doesn't, that's what you need to replace. Now, the old coil style, non-digital stoves, there were so many parts in them that you could replace. There was the burner housing up top, that would go quite often. The switch itself would go. But now you've got digital. I want to tell you guys another little story, because most times, again, it's not worth fixing a digital stove if it goes down. Because if your entire oven isn't working, top or bottom burner, then it's probably your control board. So we took a chance the other day. It was kind of cool. Becky's like, hey, I can get a digital stove for free. The lady says top works, bottom doesn't. They don't have time to frig with it. I said, you know what? Let's get it. So I went out, picked it up, threw it on the back of the truck, and I took it back to the garage, and I started pulling it apart, and I started testing. And guess what it was, guys? It was the control board. And so I thought, well, guess what? I'm going to throw that out because I don't want to spend $300. So here's how my trying to find the part went. First, I went to, had to find somewhere online that had the manual for this. And sometimes it's really easy. There's like applianceparts.com, and that'll have it. But a lot of times you got to dig a little bit. So get your model number. It can be in a few different places. On the stoves, it's quite often on the pull-out drawer. On the dryer, it's usually inside the door. On the washing machine, it's quite often on top of the lid. On the fridge, it can be in a few places, but quite often it's down on the bottom on the removable tray. Sometimes for stupid reasons, they put it on the back. But anyway, you need your model number. Then you need to go online and find a parts breakdown. And 30-day review says, small appliance repair sounds as annoying as vending machines. I bet vending machines, you probably got to pay through the nose for some of the specific parts you get for that. The one good thing about appliance repair is that tons of different manufacturers use the same part. So what you end up getting is a lot of really cheap aftermarket parts that you can get. So for this stove, I discovered, okay, I know that I have a faulty board, because that's the only other thing it can be. That's the thing about circuit boards, is if they control everything and something's not working, that's where it is. So I start looking. $300 was the first price I found. I thought, I got to be able to do better than that. I can't. So I kept digging. I ended up finding one for, it was around $170 American, which still is well into like $250 Canadian. That's way more than I was going to spend to repair a free stove I got. But I kept searching. Amazon and eBay are my two favorites, but also put it into Google, because sometimes you'll find parts really cheap from some obscure vendor, you know, in California or Vancouver, who knows where, but they end up having parts for really cheap. Well, I didn't find that, but what I did find was a repair kit for the circuit board, for the control board. And I thought, that doesn't sound right. You can't fix control boards. So I start Googling again. I went on to YouTube, and I typed in faulty control board repair for my stove. Well, it turns out that almost every single time it's a bake element. It's one of those, what they call it, a transformer or controller. It's a little black square on the board itself. So they said, here's what you do. Pull your control board out, flip it over. If that piece has gone bad, you're going to see one of the solder points where the solder has completely burnt or melted off. And I'll be damned, I hauled that thing out. Sure enough. So I thought, I guess it's time I learned how to solder electronics. So this might sound daunting, but it's not really going to be. I've watched lots of people do it. But I spent $75 on a good solder and soldering iron, and like $20 on a soldering sucker, so that I had it, and $3.47 for the replacement part. So there you go. I ended up, well, it's not repaired yet, so I can't say for sure, but I'm able to at least make a valiant effort on repairing this for if you don't include the investment in tools and skills, because I'm going to use it at, for future projects as well. But this stove, what ended up being a $300 repair if I swapped the board out myself, or maybe $250, and probably $500 or more if you brought an appliance guy in, might be able to be fixed for a $3.47 part. And that entire process took me 1 hour, from disassembling the stove, testing the stove, to internet research. And now I'm just waiting for the part to show up. So when I have it, I'll let you know for sure. But that's been my fun with appliance repair for stoves lately. And said, we just paid $8 for a small little plastic cam. I never wanted a 3D printer so bad. Oh, shout note to Patrick Lee. I see you in here this evening too. Great to have you. So how do you get better at it? Well, first off, just inherit old people's trash. So if you want to test on one, get an old dryer or an old stove from somebody that they're like, yeah, it doesn't work. So go pick it up and try it, because here's the thing. If it doesn't work, you can just throw it to the dump. So you've got a stress-free situation. Don't be experimenting when your wife's ready to cook the Thanksgiving turkey and all of a sudden you think, I should try to fix this. No, learn how to do this shit ahead of time. But just take your time, figure it out. Find a good source. Like I said, applianceparts.com is a good one, but find a good source for your manual. Get a manual for all of your appliances and keep them in, just keep them in PDF form on your Google Drive or something like that. And then search by your part number. So just take that part number, put it into Google, put it into Amazon, put it into eBay. One thing I do find is that Google's better at searching Amazon than Amazon is. So quite often I'll find things on Amazon from Google that wouldn't show up in Amazon search, and I use the exact same terms. So try that. And then, don't take your first price. Keep looking until you find a price that works for you. But don't spend too much time either. I mean, don't spend 15 hours to fix something that you probably could have bought for $200, right? Unless that's what you're into. So now the latest one is a fridge. And so for starters, let me tell you this. I would say washing machines are the thing that I repair the least or rarely ever want to, because it seems like things that actually it was a relay. Gingerbread says a relay. I couldn't remember the proper term. And yeah, that's what it was. And so what I did was I found the relay number on the top of the black casing of it, and I put that number into eBay, Amazon, and a few others. And I ended up picking up, I think, off of eBay from a reputable seller. So yeah, it was under $3.50 for something that could repair a $300 control board. So I'm kind of excited about that. So fridges, I haven't done a ton of repairs on. I have one right now that just died in an apartment. I swapped it out. I brought it back to the garage. And so I'm going to start experimenting on this fridge to see exactly what I might be able to learn from, because it can't hurt to learn. And then, like I said, washing machines, I almost always throw them out because, yeah, there it is. So Chris Dixon says, washers are expensive to repair if it isn't a simple switch or seal fix. And that's what it is. Because quite often with a washing machine, if you've had water infiltration, you've got corrosion, you've got rust, you've got issues with electrical parts. You never know how far it's going to go. And now, a lot of times with washing machines, especially the newer ones, direct drive, if it's not spinning, it's that direct drive coupling. Those aren't super expensive. The problem is you have to disassemble the entire thing. And if you've never done it before, there's a good chance you're going to break something on your way in. It's rarely, in my experience so far, it's usually not worth repairing a washing machine. I'll let you know on the fridge because, like I said, I learned a ton on this circuit board for the stove. So sometimes your mind gets open and you realize, hey, yeah, I can fix this. But for me, in the past, washing machines have been a no. Fridges, meh, and stoves and dryers are a great thing to repair. So I hope that's a good look into appliance repair. It was a little more chill topic or a little more upbeat topic to finish the show on, but I kind of hope you guys enjoyed this. I let you guys peek behind the curtain earlier. I put it on Instagram and a few other places, but I wanted to show you my new setup for mobile podcasting, because I hope that it looks 98% like it does when I'm in my dungeon at home. And so with this self-standing backdrop holder and a black backdrop, I can basically replicate my studio with my normal camera and my normal blue Eddy Blue Yeti microphone, and I have everything. So what's wrong with the fridge? I don't know yet, Gingerbread. It just won't. Well, I do know what's wrong with it. It won't cool down. I just don't know what's causing that problem. So I'm going to troubleshoot. But if you have suggestions, send them along to me because I'd love to learn. But yeah, Chicken Hawk asked me to do a review on this stand for the backdrop. So we'll see where we end up. But I like it because you guys know we've been building our life that we want to live. And part of that is traveling a metric shit ton. And so you guys have been very patient with me figuring out this mobile podcasting thing. And pretty soon I am going to go to, well, you guys know, around the 15th of September, I'm heading south for an entire month. And so this is what you'll be getting. And I think it's a pretty damn good facsimile of the real thing. So thanks for coming in tonight, guys. This was awesome. I loved it. And yeah, it feels just like home. You almost forget that there's a hot tub sitting behind me and a nice hotel room here. So thanks for dropping in. 2 reminders as we close out. I launched a merch store. So if you're looking for, I used to use toolmantim.shop, used to take you to my Amazon recommendations. You can still find them on the website, but that will now redirect to my Shopify site. And we sold out of silver there, so thank you. But if you'd like to pick up some of the cool patches, there's all the back patches are available on there right now. We also got a couple of mugs, a whiskey glass, and a tumbler. So I'm kind of excited about it. You guys, thank you for supporting me this month. This has been incredible. I told you, well, not just you, but I told everybody that around 18 months ago that I'd set a goal for December 31st this year. And it was a certain amount of dollars that to me constituted being full-time. And if I don't hit it this month, I'll only be a couple $100s off. So, and that's because of you as an incredible community, rewarding me for hopefully the value that I put out there. And I fucking dig you guys. So thank you very much. And one more thing, there'll be no live stream tomorrow night. There will be an episode in the podcast feed. It'll be the one I did with John and Nicole. So if you haven't heard it yet, it'll come out in the audio. But Miss Cook, my better half, and I are going to do our normal Friday night live stream on Saturday night when we get home, because we're getting up real early Saturday morning to pick up the kids at the airport, and we'll finally have our girls back with us. They've had a great time out east with their grandparents. So guys, thanks for digging into this new topic with me. I hope you enjoyed that new segment we opened up with. I shit you not. I really enjoyed that. Thanks, Dixon, for the name. And yeah, thank you. Thanks, Letty Lou. I really appreciate you guys. Like a metric shit ton, as I love to say. So with that, as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great fucking week.